use-case adoption plan, and my job on the team is to develop technology to help the Corps achieve that goal. And so some of you may be familiar with some of the team's work. Last year we used the COBIe toolkit for the first time, and it was the checker that we used for the COBIe challenge to check the format of the files. And we've provided the source code for this tool, and it's been very useful for us in some of the enterprise applications we have. But mostly this tool is oriented towards people in this room, heavy users of COBIe, and we want to move beyond that, because that's not really that's not keeping all of the stakeholders in mind that we've had on the various charts. So we've talked about Lyle already, and the first step of COBIe, was this idea of moving beyond the boxes in the basement. And so we started with mostly the spreadsheet interchange of COBIe. And our first intermediate step in this technology development effort is to break down all of the use case requirements for COBIe information into small pieces and make mini spreadsheets, so that the subcontractor that's just needs to get paid and provide the data, he doesn't have to look through 10, 12 worksheets and understand relational data mapping. He or she just fills out one sheet form that's macro in it. And but ultimately, what we want to do is move beyond the spreadsheets and into more popular technology mediums, and provide the backbone for a system that can let us use things like mobile devices or web applications, or a variety of things that are better for data acquisition. And I think in the construction session, we'll talk a little bit about specific use of mobile data collection. So I guess the more boring bit of it, but very important, is the NIBS standards. I've read in some of the LinkedIn groups, and I've of course heard from various people conversations about, there's so many of these IEs, and it's becoming overwhelming, and one day we're going to wake up with a big whammy, or somebody wrote something like that. But and I sympathize with them, but
you got a chuckle there.
Yeah, man, really tough crowd. So each one of those, like Sparky, Wussy on the left side, those are all the different domains. It's the same COBIe spreadsheet. It's just what you need to put in there. And then across the top, we have a modeling of phases that have to do with product type and product instance data. So if you think about those two things intersecting, we have a common format to do all of that. And in the NIBS version 3, we introduced the COBIe Light XML schema, and we designed that against the National Information Exchange Model NIM standard, and that's been a really helpful way for us to reuse our own schema. Because for each one of these different lifecycle information exchanges, we're essentially taking the COBIe data set and defining a smaller version of it, and then defining the things that you create, read, update, and delete in each of those phases. So that's been a great thing, and it's an Army mandated standard that any data models we make, we have to use the NIM. So in short, if you're not techie, this is just the data modeling stuff that we need to meet that goal of the big enterprise system and the mobile apps and whatnot. Unfortunately, this conference is in January. This is the first quarter order of our work. And so part of this first demo I want to show, you know, I could geek out and explain all of the work that goes into it and the complicated things make it happen. But I just, you know, this picture can say it all. The GUI that's for this demo is going to be a little plain, but I hope that you can understand where we're going. So what I want to do is go through the scenario of, okay, I've got the design model. I import that into my server. I export a mini COBIe template for product installation. I have my subcontractors installing equipment independently, and then they import those back, and then we can export the results. So right now the user interface is really, really plain, just enough to demonstrate something. Eventually we're going to have it so that the whole process the business process is going to be reflected in the user interface. But so I'll create a new project. This can run, this is meant to run on any machine that has Java. It uses a database in the back end, but you don't have to install database software. It's Java.
Which is really important, because that means it can be installed and run on equipment that you don't have administrator access to, right? Which is the case for almost all of us that work in a corporate setting. So this was an extreme concern for us, that a guy in a trailer with crappy equipment from 5 years ago could still run it. We think.
Well, not only that, we have to think about our own stovepipes and different quirks. We have an ambitious goal of getting ready for an FY15 mandate. I don't have time to set up an enterprise database server and get the security accreditation and all this stuff. This is just something that can run on USACE person's desktop, Corps of Engineers desktop, and they don't have to get any security waivers or have IT people install new stuff on their machine. So I'm going to import, I'm going to go with, I hate to use the duplex model, and the resolution changed, so I'm kind of fitting a big rectangle into a small square, but here I have the duplex model that most of you are familiar with. I have the export of the IOC model, so the export of the design model. So I import this, and I don't have, we haven't got the progress bar and all these things. So I have the faith that in any second, dialogue will pop up saying this was successfully imported. So it says it was successfully imported.
Just remember the picture he showed when he showed demo.
Yeah. Yeah, and I guess going back to all the things going on behind the scenes, we put in a lot of effort into making this very flexible so that we could, once we do switch over to an enterprise database, our same code is going to work. We can do this on a variety of platforms. A lot of the transforms and things that are happening between the different data models, we could be able to run it in a .NET application or a Java application. I won't geek out too much on all that, but I'm going to export a product installation template. This is the thing that we would have the subcontractors use to actually enter the data initially, before we actually have a full-out tool. So let's look at that template. Maria Angelica, who I think is on the phone, she developed some macros for these forms to make it a little easier. So I'm going to pretend like I'm the person installing radiators, and I'm just going to delete everything else that's not a radiator. Hide it. Go up to the top here. Hide this all radiators. Okay, type name. Alright, so this is from a design model. There's no manufacturers yet. So the macro that I mentioned lets us go ahead and enter the information again, you know, I can enter all of the model numbers and whatnot. For the sake of time constraints, I have one that I've already filled out here, so I'll import that.
So while Chris is importing this, the real innovation happens in the contract because it says, instead of giving us an installed equipment list, we're telling the contractor, you have to fill out this form.
Okay, so it's importing that, and the idea is that we can at any time export all of the different things that somebody might want to see if they want to see progress on the whole installation. It could be a report, it could be just like now I'll just say, give me the COBIe file. And again, you know, I don't expect, you know, once we actually have this thing in the subcontractor's hands, it's not going to be just import export menu there. All right, so I'm going to go to my components, make sure that updated. Yeah, okay, so as my serial numbers, my installation dates, should have updated the type worksheet also with the new manufacturer. And I appreciate your patience and letting me share this incredibly plain and boring bit. So I'll give you, I guess, a little bit of a cookie.
Well, so let me just say, boring is good, right? Because the subcontractor can do boring. So we want it to be incredibly boring, right? You print out the thing, it has all the stuff he already filled out, what he didn't fill out yet, and he fills out the stuff he didn't fill out. He gives it back to you, and you repeat until 100%.
I guess what I was really thinking, I wasn't thinking so much, oh, this is so boring. I was thinking this is self-indulgent because I'm so thrilled to see this work. All that Goldbergian work that was done to get there. Okay, so
One more thing to mention is that we're going to give away all these templates.
oh yeah, let me show you
Okay.
I have this the direct.
And we're going to give away the information delivery plan. So this is not a, you know, we're building this tool, anybody's going to be able to use it. Igor can use it, Kimon can use it, all of the templates that we're providing.
Right, and
Right.
there's we just showed the product installation template, but there's several others like for the door schedule or the warranty information, etc.
And so we'll show some more about these on the construction side this afternoon.
Okay, so the last bit of demonstration I wanted to give was a look into you know, the sort of things we want to export from this tool. And it's good to be able to export the IFC file or the COBIe file or just different reports, but what we really want is I guess something that's like an ebook or something that's a big collection of the building data and easy index format. So,
Sorry to interrupt again. What we're trying to do is say, what's the alternative to Lyle,
oh yeah,
right? So it's like you go to the doctor's the eye doctor's office, right? And you're sitting in the chair and he puts a lens in front of you and he says, this is what A is. And then he flips it and says, this is what B is. So we're going to give you an idea of what we think B might look like instead of all of that junk in the boiler room, okay?
right. And we want this to be something that any of the stakeholders can use. It's not like a modeling tool. So, you know, I have various ways that I can look at this floor plan. If I want to find the restrooms, there they are. If I want to find the conference rooms, and they're highlighted somewhere. If I want to see what's going on in the conference room or see what equipment's there, bam, I click on it, there it is. If I want to look at give me all of the rooms that have this particular air conditioning. There's one right there, let's look at that. And I need to look at the test results, because things aren't acting like we expect them to. You look at this component, this air conditioning unit, and lo and behold, it doesn't have any documents. Let's pick the ball valve. I'll give up after this one. The ones that have documents, there's links down here, and you click on it, and it goes to that document. And if you don't want to look through the floor plan like that, you just want to say, give me the property form, property transfer. That property transfer form that Bill mentioned, I can just click there, and there it is. And if I go and update, do another product installation, I can export this back out, and it's going to update all of the information. Or if I want to see the COBIe spreadsheet, or just a tabular view of the rooms and the spaces, zones, then I can do that. So let me get back to my presentation.
Should we mention anything about the floor plan generator there?
Yes, that's sort of in this what's next.
Okay,
And,
good.
I think maybe one question, if those of you that are interested in the technology, you had the question of how can I get this? The short answer to that is for the first couple of years of our ERDC support contract, the USACE COBIe implementation, this is going to be provided to our subcontractors for free. And we're looking into a Kickstarter style project to make this more general and provide an open source tool that people could. And in the Kickstarter project, one level of funding could be if you just want the technology, get the compiled code. Somebody else could contribute more and get all of the source code while it's being developed. But then eventually, after 2 years, it's just going to be released into the wild. Everybody can have the source code.
And we should just mention that the source code includes a very interesting little piece that takes an IFC file and makes an image map floor plan of it that has hot spots that represent each of the spaces in the rooms.
Yeah, I didn't really mention that. That's all the COBIe toolkit work that we did up to this point has all been based on the BIMServer platform, and we made a little plugin that exports that floor plan that we were just looking at. So we just click a button and it exports that floor plan. Okay, so I think that's about it. We've already covered the NIBS stuff, and I'll beat that dead horse. So if anybody has questions, we should have time. I don't know if Bob ever made it.
No, I don't think so. So, questions for Chris?
You guys define correct roles and responsibilities for contractor?
Yeah, so the question of who's going to fill out which bits of this, right? So what's required in the contract language is that the contractor provide an information delivery plan where he decides who's going to provide what data. The tool that you saw Chris putting together will allow the prime contractor to export specific subsets of those templates for specific data. So if there's a plumbing contractor, all the plumbing stuff can go out. If there's a heating contractor and a different cooling contractor, they can identify the objects that are going to go with each one. Okay, so then all we're asking is that the contractor tell us how he wants to do it.
Yesterday in the healthcare presentations, we heard several different discussions that were alluding to a information exchange platform that was something very different than what COBIe is. with the new tools that you guys are developing in-house as a software developers, what's your future outlook into the participation of software vendors into COBIe when you guys are developing somewhat of your own systems, and it seems like the government agencies are wanting to move away from traditional code.
Yeah, so the way COBIe's been implemented in the past is that it represents an alternative to the delivery of information at major project milestones. That's like when you say traditional COBIe, I guess that's what you're thinking about, right?
Correct.
Like every time you get a set of drawings from the designer, you get a COBIe file that comes with it, right? And that at the end of construction, you get a COBIe file, right? So I think what you're seeing is something which allows contractors to create that set of COBIe data necessary at each stage of them doing the work instead of waiting until the end. Right now, this was the idea all along, except most folks don't understand how to look at that data model and parse it back into contracts. So this has been the expectation all along, is that when somebody's installing a piece of equipment, they provide that, and that's all they need to do. And that's what they're already required to do. We just capture it in that small bit of COBIe necessary for that thing. Now, in terms of, great new technology ideas, it doesn't matter whether it's in an abacus or in the cloud. The important idea is that we define what information is necessary. So we can do COBIe on a laptop, we can do COBIe on a tablet, we can do COBIe on a phone. Okay. So I think that there's an idea of a kind of fixation about some technology that is maybe not realistic, because there's going to be, I should be able to do COBIe on my new watch, right? Okay, I should. Okay. But the important thing is to define what it is that's going to go on here, not to just say some general topic. So the COBIe Lite schema breaks the COBIe file down into each of those individual transactions.
Yesterday there was more of a discussion of applications plugging into more of a centralized data repository instead of transferring this data in traditional COBIe means from system to system. And that everything is talking more in a real-time, live scenario. So a need for COBIe information exchange would somewhat fall to the wayside. So from what
I would take exception to some of that, like without getting into too much technical detail, the LCIE part of the COBIe Lite schemas, the whole purpose of it was to open it up to enterprise systems so that if you did have a centralized repository, you have these structured schemas that define for product installation, what are the data that's created, what is the data that can be updated, deleted, or read, so that if you were developing an application for that database, all the application developer needs is those schemas. And the tool I showed is more of the same. I've got my COBIe on my computer and you've got yours, but when I was saying enterprise system, or like the database that I'm using for this is just a SQLite, but it's compatible with MySQL, which could be the centralized piece. So I'm certainly not keeping that out of mind. But I think the COBIe data is still relevant because no matter where it's stored, we got to know what is it that we're exchanging. At least that's where I hope what we're doing.
One more comment before Igor. What you're seeing here is a transformation in a way to deliver information meeting contract requirements. Okay, so instead of having a paper document, you're giving an electronic version of that same paper document. So until somebody says it's okay, the lawyers say it's okay to have a central data model server where you're able to lock down everything in some glorious vision of the future, we've got contracts that have to go out tomorrow. So the question is, how do we get those guys to extract that information out in a way that is boring? Right? Because it has to be, this is the same job I've always done. So what you're seeing is the chopping up of the entire data model, so you don't have to deliver the whole thing at every exchange. You just do what's required in the contract. So, go ahead.
All right. You mentioned earlier, I heard confusing messages as a software developer. One is we will build the software and we will give it to contractors for free. And pretty much what is built is something that came on 4 or 5 years ago. So what I hear as the first message is Corps of Engineers now develop software that is competing with the commercial software packages and giving it out to the contractors for free. On the other hand, Bill just mentioned whatever we build, we will give it so Kimon and Igor can build those templates into their software and deliver it on our projects. So how does Corps of Engineers envisions this picture where commercial software vendors work with your internally built software? In a bit more detail. So let's say Clark tomorrow or Pencil Phelps calls me and say, I don't need Daedalus anymore because Corps gives me everything for free. So how do you see that picture?
Yeah, I guess I'll try to fill that first, and if I fail, then I'll just hit Bill in the leg. I wasn't quite clear. Like the first 2 years of COBIe adoption, we're defining the requirements for USACE, and we're developing the technology experimentally. After that 2 years, the tool is shut off. They can't use it, and then it goes into this more public version of the software, trying to get this Kickstarter stuff and provide the important thing isn't the widgets. I mean, we're a team of like 1 or 2 people, and we're spread very thin. There's no way that we can make a product as robust as any of the products that the vendors have. That's not our goal. In fact, we have individual guidance for using the different tools, for the people that are using those tools. But all of the transformations and the really boring Goldbergian stuff, that's the stuff that I, as a developer, am excited to give away. I think would provide the most value to the vendors because they don't have to invest tons of effort into doing stuff that's it's just boring. You want to make a cool application. That's not really our primary function. The things I do are for, some of it's for production work, but mostly, we're just trying to aid them in implementing COBIe.
Okay, you're going to hit me in the leg now?
Yeah.
Okay. The first thing is that the COBIe information delivery plan allows the contractor to tell the Corps what it wants to use. Okay?
They will choose free.
Well, the next thing to say is that what you're seeing here is really an expression of an owner trying to understand what its requirements are. Okay? So once these templates have been identified, free is not so good if there's nobody to call for help, right? Free is not so good if you don't have the right Java version installed. Free is really clunky, usually, right? And so we're doing this to understand what our requirements are. We're giving away the requirements. We're giving away the templates. We're giving away the information delivery plan once it's underway and people have seen it and so forth, that you've tried it and used it. We don't have a date for the exchange of that, but it'll be before this time next year. Okay? So I think that's the real answer to the question.
Just a follow-up to what you were saying. Actually, reference to the question over here. The presentation yesterday about healthcare was not to say we're not going to do COBIe. COBIe is part of the structure. And we focus on web services and RESTful web services and services-oriented architecture. How can we connect no matter? It's not one big database that's going to be in the middle, but how do we start connecting the dots? So one question following that, it's very interesting what you're showing here. Do you have, and this is specifically to what the DoD and DoD is looking for in the Dimmel's work that we're doing right now through NIBS, is how do we connect to other systems that are already being developed? So is there an API and a RESTful web service, for example, that we can interact with you, that we can start testing as they're looking for solutions?
Yes, so no, generally no, there's not, because the things you have to connect to require you to be on the networks of the agencies where those systems reside.
Right, but the tool that you're developing can be parked outside. This is a big problem.
No, I understand, and that's part of the discussion we're having.
Right.
So for example, in the construction trailer in the Corps of Engineers, the contractor is required to use a system called the resident management system. Through our efforts, they are opening a web service for specific COBIe data. And we're going to build it out and test it to make sure that works during this pilot activity. And depending upon the level of acceptable risk and all of that of the system that's delivering the information, I would expect that other people would be able to submit such data. But I think that's a second question. We've got to get them to open it to something that will sit on a system that they trust first.
Right. But I think the way to make this explode, and that this is a problem with government systems like SEPs and DIMLs, they're sitting in a black box behind a server that nobody can get to unless you have that access.
Well, look, any corporate IT is going to be locked down.
Right.
Okay, so what we're trying to do through this procedure and through the pilot is to unlock exchanges of specific contractually required data. So that's on our back end. Once those are open, it may very well be that other people can use data created from other systems to fill those holes. But we have to get them open. You're not going to be able to get them open because you don't sit inside the firewall to begin with.
Right, and that's the problem. If we're going to interact with the commercial side, we have to be able to interact in a neutral environment.
I'm explaining to you how we're enabling you to be able to do that.
Maybe I don't see it, but I guess I have to.
Okay, well, step number one is those systems have to be able to accept web service transactions.
Right.
They currently do not.
Right.
The thing that we're creating is allowing that web service to be put in place for that system. Once it's there, we think it could be used by many others.
Right. So can we?
But until it's there, nobody can do anything.
It sounds like a chicken and egg thing, but can we?
Well, it's exactly a chicken and the egg thing, and the question is, who is going to be able to talk to the internal corporate people in order to convince them to make this happen? Somebody who's on the same domain as that system. So there's no way that you're going to go to the Corps of Engineers and say, RMS, you need to give me a web service.
Right. That's the same problem with Russ and the DoD, and that's why they're moving it outside.
So I'm telling you, we're trying to start to do that for the Corps of Engineers.
Maybe we should just have a follow-up discussion. I think there's something in the middle here that's could make it work. I'm just hoping it doesn't get locked down to a point that we can't actually help make this happen. And if it's behind a firewall, it's going to be the same problems we've had in the past. So just don't want to miss that opportunity.
I'm happy to talk to you about it after.
Great, thanks.
Oops. This is more a comment than a question, but I do really want to congratulate Bill, Chris, and Jason, because I really think that this is what the Building Smart Alliance is all about. We have a potential technology here that could transform and improve design, construction, and facility operations and maintenance. But people are stubbing their toe every step of the way. And so you guys have gone out and said, you know, where are people stubbing their toe? Okay, the contractor doesn't know how to parcel out the COBIe requirements to his subcontractors. And, you know, you've really taken a little place where they've stubbed their toe and you fixed it. And you've developed an approach to fixing it. It isn't the only way to fix it. Every vendor can go out and come up with a different way of fixing it. But you've created a paradigm for fixing that little And that's the way we're going to achieve industry-wide interoperability. It's not by waving our arms and saying everybody should really do things at a grand scale and understand the big picture. It's by solving the little problems that prevent people from using the technology effectively. And I really, really want to applaud the three of you for tackling that problem, which isn't very glamorous, it's boring, but which is really, really essential to success. Thank you.
Thank you.
Follow on to that comment and talking about chicken and egg situations. What have you learned over the years from developing COBIe that you are applying to the development of the new IEs? What things might you create sooner rather than later? How might you do a remix based upon your experience with COBIe?
Mm-hmm. It's a good question. I haven't really reflected on it like that. It's just sort of, it's baked in over time, I guess. I think when we started COBIe, there were a lot of pieces missing. There was an incomplete understanding of the need to define the business process and exchange requirement. There was a technical end of it, right, that all of the people have grown with over time. But I guess going back to the slide that I had before, probably what's really new about NBIMS version 3 is not the technical aspect. It's realizing that this is really a social kind of issue. And so it's a change management kind of issue. So we have to make these exchanges reliable and boring, frankly, if they're going to work, right? So to do that, it requires the standard test models. When we started this, everybody could come in with their own model. Now there's standard test models, and even those people who have been developing projects like the steel project, Chris was telling me that he's thinking about using the clinic for the steel project so that we can really begin to see at least one example of how everything fits together in a laboratory project. So having standard kind of test models is very important, and I hope that's going to continue. And I kind of equate it to like a petri dish, right? Everybody needs to have the same petri dish. You're going to do microbiology. Everybody makes up their own petri dish. You can't compare the results. So the standard models, and then the other piece is kind of the standard testing. So we've got to a place where we have open source testing program, open source transformations that are robust enough to go from test models to real projects, thanks to the work at TNO. And so all of those rules are probably much more clear. I think anybody participating in a challenge now, especially on the construction and operations and maintenance side, would say it's a pretty boring thing because we've got a standard testing method, standard models, and it's just you do the mapping in your software and it either comes out right or it doesn't. So I guess that's kind of what I've learned in thinking about it and what's new in NBIMS version 3 and version 2. I think that's about as close to an answer as I'm going to be able to get for you. Other questions? Okay.
Good morning, Bill.
Morning.
Having come from the IFC world long years ago and sitting here now and realizing that this morning's conference is starting out with pretty much the focus of COBIe, I'd like to have you bring me up to date, if you would. If I were to draw and have you draw a Venn diagram of the IFC model for a building, which includes all the structural elements, and so forth, and then COBIe, which I originally thought was going to be dealing with basically the fixed assets within that building.
Yes, that's correct.
But now, things when you start talking about the IEs, the other IEs like WALL-E and information exchange or whatever, how much overlap is there if you were to draw a Venn diagram of what you're defining through COBIe versus all the rest of the other building components like the structural numbers and so forth? where is COBIe? Is it gonna overtake all of those other elements?
I think this is a great question, and thanks for asking, because it goes to kind of the heart about what is a model view definition. So if you think about the IFC file, some of you may have remember this comedian Stephen Wright from decades ago. One of his famous jokes was, I don't want to have everything in the world, where would I put it? Right? You need a world-sized world to put everything in it. Well, if you have everything that anybody ever needed to know about a building, nobody would be able to have any value for that because people need just the slice that they need to get a certain jump on. So really, model view definitions are defining what those slices are, where the IFC is the alphabet, right, that we use to build those slices up. So you're right, COBIe is the specification of the fixed assets. Managed assets is kind of what I would describe it to be.
So if you were to describe them, what Wally would be, how is that?
So let me tell you the ones that have been submitted for ballot. Okay, so we have the building programming information exchange that contains spaces and information about spaces. So you think about room data sheets. Now spaces are also managed assets, so there's an overlap in the Venn diagram there. Okay. Now when you think about the building, the design, at the end of the design process, you've got various systems. You've got an HVAC system, electrical system, water system. Right? So each of those systems has some fixed assets. So there's an overlap with COBIe there. And they also have some things that are not managed assets. They might be fixed, but again, COBIe is more about managed assets. So a piece of pipe you might consider to be a fixed asset, but it's not really a managed. There's no O&M to be done on a piece of pipe. Is there a question? Any more questions? I think we're probably ready for a break. Do you know where the coffee is, Dee?
All over the floor.